Hi. Thank you for coming to NewWay's luncheon today. I'm Arthur Arlino, former teacher, taught math, 7th grade initially, and then high school, and started building a program for schools where we're making schedule changes. So that's how I got started many, many years ago. And what happened? All at the end? Go from the beginning would help. What I like to do is, because sometimes when I come into a hotel, I don't know how good the Wi-Fi is and the connection is. So what I like to do is first prepare and show you things and explain how things would work. And then the second half is actually take you to real schools with real data. I know a lot of sales presentations are just at their demos. I've found I have a middle school from Detroit and then 2 middle schools from New Jersey. And then I found a high school from Chicago and 2 high schools from New Jersey. And these are all real schools with real data. I started out by helping schools with a scheduling system. I'm sorry, be able to do schedule changes. I worked at a high school in Long Island. You probably pick up from my accent. That worked in Long Island, high school, about 1,200 kids, and we did changes nonstop after school opened, even before school opened, the way the system's scheduled. And so I did that for a couple of years. I developed a system for my own school. And then I said, well, why can't something, they actually asked me, could something be done with scheduling? And so I investigated it, and both my sons work for the company, have worked for the company. Arthur now has his own company in Texas. Michael's based in Chicago. And basically, I've been building systems for 30 years. And my school background really helps, and I actually think seeing the problems that schools are having help. So let's start off with scheduling. Most people don't know this, but the original scheduling system IBM created in the 70s. When IBM decided to get out of the business, it went public. So it was public domain, the code. So anybody then, most of the companies simply took the code and put it into their system. When I looked at all the problems they were having, and the administrator saying, I don't want a system like that. And I said, well, what are some of the issues? And I said, well, I can schedule a kid by hand, and the machine didn't. Why is that? I have some of these lists here. So, but let me just go back one slide. So I first developed a guiding system on a PC. That came out 81, 82. And then in 1984, I looked at the problem. And my background being math, and a master's degree in education, but I had a minor in game theory and decision trees that helped. I said, could we do this differently? So I, believe it or not, artificial intelligence is a buzzword today. Everybody's got it. You see all those commercials. But it actually goes back to the 1950s when it was first introduced. And be able to get the machine to think. What you may not realize is basically most of the systems in the market today, and you can ask a very profound question. If they tell you it has AI, then you should never have to schedule a kid by hand. The machine didn't figure out all the possibilities. What I mean is it's doing rolls. My background is math. It's doing tumbles and rolls, or spins, whatever you want to call them. But it's like the slot machine. And after so many tries, believe it or not, it stops. And you would say, well, why would you do that? If the machine is there, and first of all, when the PC came out, once you bought the PC, why not let it sit there? And take as long as you want. Why would you stop? Well, in a lot of cases, they wanted to make it look better. But you'll hear from a lot of companies that you won't get better than 70, 80%. That's the best you're going to get. And that's not really true. Yes, with that technology, that's the best you'll get. But with new technology, you get much better. So we developed the guidance system, moved into scheduling. Here are some of the other things that came up. There's a lot of the systems include partial scheduling. So the kids are scheduled, but they're not scheduled complete, and you've got to work that out. Then you've got obviously completed schedules. Why are the electives bumping out academics? I want the kids' academics scheduled first. So the question is, and why are these kids being scheduled before those kids? There was no rhyme or reason. Whether it was alphabetic or by grade, it really didn't make sense. So being the math background I had, let's look at the degree of difficulty. If you were doing this by hand, you would take your most difficult kids first. That makes sense? And work with them. How many singletons do they have? How many APs do they have? You know, and so on. So basically, the course sections were not well balanced. And particularly, even if you get them well balanced at 60, 70%, 80%, by the time your counselors finish making all the changes, it balances out the window. It's all over the place. They'll put kids anywhere there's room, which I understand. They're trying to get a kid scheduled. Overall load, A lot of schools, including the school I work with, if you taught more than so many students, you got a stipend. You got extra money. So we built in looking at overall teacher load. I want to balance my classes across all teachers. I remember I taught, my math classes were all 30 kids, 28, 30 kids. Mr. Man across the way was 15 and 20. Question is, why is that? Well, you're not looking at overall load. So I need to look at this. So we built a lot of things, but the last thing I'll mention is safeguards. There's an attitude out there that says garbage in, garbage out. I said, wait a second. These are not computer people. True story. When John Bowdle entered the schedule in that system we were using, he put 2 classes in the same room at the same time. Now, how did that happen? It didn't, because he had to type it into the computer. He had a magnetic board. In fact, he didn't have a magnetic board. My point was he had a chart. And every school I've ever gone into, the chart was by teachers, not by sections. Then you got to pull the data off the board and put it into your system. Well, a simple keying error, and you got a problem. That affected, out of the 1,200 students, 411 kids' schedules had to be changed. True story. So I saw these things happening, and I said, why not build a safeguard in there? Don't allow a teacher to be put into a conflict. Don't allow a room to be put in a conflict. Just don't allow it. You know, stop right away and say, wait a second, you got a problem here. And so that builds a lot of safeguards into the system. Perhaps you'd like to go quickly around the room. I talked to a lot of people, but just quickly, tell me, John, your school, and unless you've already done that, I don't want to. Just off the top of your head, and I thank you again for coming today. Is there a wish or a couple wishes that when you were coming here today that you'd like to throw out, and then maybe I can pick up and address that when I show you some things? Any particular wish?
I think the biggest thing for me, because I do most of the scheduling soup to nuts, I think, is just more of the computer and less of me stopping at 55, 60%.
I know, Vinny was telling me that, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And you're using...
And we have half our schedule singletons. So for me...
How many students again?
600.
So you're a small high school, yeah.
So to see all those conflicts in my head and is grueling.
Yeah. And then at what point do you turn it over to the counselors?
Never.
No, I didn't mean for the master. I mean to figure out the rest. You go 100%?
I go 100% until August, and then they make the changes. Just because, to be honest, it's so, not to be whatever, it's so intricate that sometimes the less brains I have on it, the better.
Okay. Vinny, anything?
Well, John is also, to his benefit, a control freak with the schedule because he does a great job with it. So for me, my goal is to help ease the burden. I see what he goes through late summer. I'm going through my own business as a building principal, ready to open.
Yeah.
But I see as it's getting down to crunch time, and I don't want to say, hey, how can I help you? Get out of here. That's how you can, So we have a good relationship. We work well together, but you know, two brains sometimes something.
No, you're right.
Maybe able to
help. Definitely, you're right.
You know, an angle he hasn't seen.
True. And even when it comes to staffing, if you got to make some adjustments,
Staffing.
He's got to go back to you and say, can we do this or not?
Right.
Absolutely.
Staffing, I'll usually, more of a hand on student schedule.
Sure. Susan?
I'm curious about, we use Power School.
Right.
And Power School's not going to go away. So
Right.
Just wondering what there is that supplements or works, dynamically
I'm glad you brought that up. I don't know, you guys weren't here a little bit early, but I told a little bit more introduction. And I developed a student information system over 30 years. And I work with hundreds of schools in New York and New Jersey. I retired a couple years ago. I did that for 30 years. So I'm not here to in any way replace your system. What I'm proposing is we can take you to the cloud. I can work with you one-on-one, and we can help you come up with answers and do a better job doing that. And then every school I've worked with, and I'm going to show you at least 6 schools, but I've done many more than that, we'll export the data out of your system, the course request and student request. That's all we need. No personal data is needed, okay? And then get you 100% scheduled academically. We'll guarantee that. I'll show you how. I'll show you a couple schools we've done that for. When you get to throw the electives in, you'll get 95 plus with the electives. Okay. Okay. And then we'll put the system data back into your system. And I know how to do that. We've done that with several schools. A gentleman yesterday, I had a luncheon yesterday, about the same number of people. Well, do I have to talk to real time? I have to.
Well, that's what we have.
He said, no. I said, we can export the data. In fact, if you can print course selections, you print them, we'll send it to a file. I'll write a program to read it. It's not rocket science. It can be done. And then moving the data back in, that's one thing I want to mention, is that I'll show you a school actually where their structure was different. And to solve some of the problems, I showed them what could be done and coded differently. But however, when it goes back into your system, it has to match your system.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, if I take algebra and I want to break things out in algebra, kids at different levels. But it's all got to go back in that school I'm thinking about right now. It was from Chicago. They use Power School. And they had a course number. It's got to go back into that one course number because that's what's on your transcripts, etc. But now you've got the kids all figured out where they're going to go. Okay. I didn't want to miss anybody. Chris?
Yeah, just time constraints.
Okay.
About 1,500 kids. So.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I didn't mention that the schools that are attending the luncheon today range from 250, 300 up to 1,700 plus. So it ranges in size, but everyone has a challenge. And people might assume, Susan, because it's so small, it's so easy. It's not. And if you have a lot of singletons, that doesn't make it easy. Dominic, you want to throw something in? Rich, I'm sorry.
Let's see, I have a school that has 2 separate buildings across a 4-lane highway.
Really?
The kids cross the street back and forth at the end of every period.
Oh my God.
The teachers are housed in the respective buildings. They don't move.
Yeah.
But the kids move. We implemented a schedule in our middle, or I implemented a schedule in both of our middle schools where teachers have come planning teams.
Oh, good.
We did teams. Good. We want to bring some of those ideas to the high school.
Okay. Yes.
However, what I've always been told is when I throw the dynamics of 2 buildings, teachers assigned to each building,
right.
My constraints on the computer system throw everything into whack where
really
you know.
Okay. But it's really at the end of the day one master.
I can get 95% of kids with schedules by the time I wrap everything up.
Okay.
However, it's still never ideal.
Right. Okay. All right. So. Well, thank you for that. All right. So getting back to the artificial intelligence, let's prioritize kids. Let's see how difficult it is to schedule that kid. Let's think about a lot of things that were causing problems, teacher load. So we built all those factors in. It isn't just balancing sections. You've got to look at teachers' overall load. You've got to look at, you got 9 through 12 school. Every period those kids in 9th grade have to be somewhere. In 10th grade have to be somewhere. If the system isn't looking at that, it's not helping you. And all of a sudden I have guidance counselors say, well, period 5, I can't make any changes in period 5 because the system overloaded period 5. So there's a lot of factors you have to be. Obviously, I don't have the time to get into it. But I will tell you this, and this is from my math background. Here's a note. I deliberately put it this morning in orange or yellow red. It takes a machine 1,000 years to generate a complete game tree for checkers and generating and evaluating 1 node per nanosecond. So the numbers are astronomical. So if anybody says your tumbles and tries will give you an answer, it's not. It just won't do it. One last thing I'll say is I like to play chess, and I also like to shoot pool. You're not thinking 1 move at a time. When you're playing chess, you're 3 or 4 moves ahead. Same thing in pool. You're not looking at this shot. You're looking at the next shot and the following, if you're any good. Same thing here. So I built it and said I got to be thinking not just here, the next 2, 3 moves. And then think about that. When I actually show you and I know I'm repeating myself, I deliberately the first half before lunch, I made a couple videos, so I'll show you actually doing that. But then after lunch, I'm going to take your reel and actually show it actually being done. Many have said to me you were ahead of your time, Artie. And I think in many cases I was. And if I was talking 20 years ago about AI, people would look at me cockeyed. Today, people, it's everywhere. People are talking about it. A lot of it's just sales talk. All right, so let me go out here, minimize this. And these are videos I made, but I'm going to then show you these actual kids. I always do this because I never know when I go into a hotel, maybe the Wi-Fi isn't any good, and I won't be able to then show you other things I'd like to show you. So I always have some videos first. This happens to be a middle school, grade 7 and 8 in Detroit. Oh, I'm doing the tree. I apologize. I gotta show you the video. The tree is after lunch. Let's take that kid. Okay. And it's looking and making decisions. I can show it to you after lunch. I can actually stop it and say, why is it making that decision? See, most systems are like a black box. You don't really know what it's doing. You don't. And it can tell you anything. A salesperson will tell you anything. But what is it doing? And so you see at some point it hits a red box. What that means, it reached a dead end. That's not going to work. But here's the magic of AI. Once it knows that, it thinks and learns. It doesn't go back down that path again. It knows that can't solve a problem. And it'll keep on. You will never get out of our system a kid that you could schedule by hand. Guaranteed. And I challenge schools for 20 years. If you can find a kid that you could schedule by hand the system couldn't, I'll refund your money. That's how commit, because it's AI. It's thinking. It's not just tumbling and trying. That's one video I want to show you. That's a 7th and 8th grade student. Where's the other one I want to show you? Okay. And the important thing to remember here is if your data changes, more kids, different sections, different days, it has to think through all that process. And so very easily it can change.
So now, right now, it's going through all the scheduling options that are available to that student? When it runs into a dead end, it's going back
It prunes that tree. We'll never go down that branch again. And then it keeps it going down a different path. And eventually, it's going to find a solution. If it exists. If it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist. But it's not going to be you doing it by hand and the machine didn't do it.
Right.
That's what I'm basically proposing. I actually have done in many schools. And you can look at the schedule now. It's a pretty complicated schedule. That happens to be from a New Jersey middle school. And you have 13 mods, all different days, quarterly courses. And I want to mention that's scheduling all their electives. They call them specials in the middle school grade level. But all their specials and all their academics. And then I'll show you one more. Let me do a high school here. Where's my high school? Here's one. And typically, when you look at this, you'll see the labs, the PEs and labs. This is also New Jersey high school. And a lot of times there's an issue with the lab connecting properly with the PE, and can it solve that problem? And I can actually stop this after lunch, the live one, and show you exactly what it's doing and why it's making that decision. But it's looking at grade level, classes, sections, a number of different things. Okay. All right, let me get back to my PowerPoint slide. Okay. So in summary, we developed a guidance system that allows us to do schedule changes. We built the AI into the guidance system now. So I'm going to show you at some point in time. You can say, as a counselor or an administrator, just for that kid, go to work, tell me what's possible. And it'll actually come up with 15 schedules, or 2 schedules, or 100 if it's available. I'm going to show you that after lunch. The scheduling with the AI, and this is getting back how I developed over time. So eventually we started out with PCs, and then they wanted them connected, and then it was a local area network, and over the years it became a complete enterprise system. So that's my background. I have a complete background in teaching and a background in developing systems for 30 years. And all with school, all through with K through 12 schools. That's simple. I'll let you read some of these comments from people I've worked with over the years. They say it's better if I let you read it than me reading it, so I'll give you a chance to take a look at that. And some of these people, I won't mention them by name. Well, I'll mention one. Pam Teitelbaum, an elementary guidance. She's retired now, by the way. Elementary guidance counselor. Gets moved up to be director of guidance for the high school. She says, Artie, I've never done this before. I have no idea. And I said, well, if we work together, we probably need 5 to 7 days. It's from start to finish. Guarantee it won't go more than 10. We'll have it done within 10. And we did. She said, the first year I was working with you, Artie, I had no idea what you were doing. None. Second year, I began to get an idea what you were doing. By the third year, I understood it. However, every year I still keep a couple days in my budget because if my master runs into problems, I want someone else to be able to look at it. And so she continued to do that with every year. So what I'm offering here is not doing scheduling for you, is to bring the tools, bring the knowledge, and then work with you. and eventually you'll be able to use the tools. That's the goal plan, as opposed to me saying, I'll do your schedule for you, which I could do, but that's not really the objective here. The objective is to be able to do that. And I will tell you that everybody I've ever worked with, I'll tell you who they are. And anybody I'm going to be working with in the next year, I'll also tell you who those people are. And based upon yesterday's luncheon, and much like the group in this room, the people that attended were all experienced people. And out of the 4 schools there, I'm sure 3 of the schools will continue to do something. And so I worked with only suburban schools. Typical districts in New Jersey and New York. They had a high school and middle school. Some in New Jersey were just K-8 districts. I'm actually going to show you one of them. And that's what I worked with for maybe 25 years. And then I went to a conference, I forget where it was, and I met the Deputy Secretary of Education. At that time was Jim Shelton. And their big concern is inner city schools. And he said, we're not going to replace a system in schools. That's not going to happen. And that's a big contract, and et cetera, et cetera. But we are interested in the scheduling piece. And for a couple of reasons. Either they've got the system they put in, it's very expensive. Maybe you could do it, maybe you couldn't do it, but they don't know how to do it. Or it's too complicated to do it. I've had this particular school I'm going to show you after lunch, a middle school principal told me, in those days it was SASE. We used a system, and I spent so much time, and when I was finally done, I got 70, and it's a middle school. Middle school, every kid's got to get a schedule. High school too, but there's some flexibility in electives. Middle school, you don't have that option. And I went back to doing cards by hand. So sometimes the system could do it, but it's too complicated to do it. You don't know how to do it. So I worked with suburban schools. And but then they asked me, could we help them out? And so one of the first schools we helped them out with was in Detroit. And a lot of the schools in the city, the students were not getting everything that they needed. I don't want to get into all the detail, but believe it or not, these kids were being handicapped. I was used to dealing with suburban schools and some good schools like Jericho and Long Island, and they were doing great things for kids. And when you go into these schools, it really is. And I have to tell you, Detroit at that time was considered the worst school district in the country. So these kids teachers and kids were both in trouble. So I'll play a little bit of that.
Channel 7 Action News starts right now.
A K-8 school in Detroit is seeing success in a groundbreaking program that changes the way children learn. It's the Palmer Park Prep Academy. 7th and 8th grade students in this school do not typically move through all the same classes as their peers. Instead, they receive customized teaching based on their level of comprehension. Students are placed into language, arts, and math classes with those who are tested at similar learning levels in each subject.
You can do more with them. You may have to use manipulatives with this group. You can do more with them than if they're in the classroom with students that have a high ability according to those that have a low ability. It's easier to work with the students, and it's better for the students.
The program is based on data pulled from a digital assessment tool that looks at performances on MEP tests. And so far, this approach to teaching has only been used at select schools in New York.
Coming up on...
So the idea here was not just schedule the kids. In a lot of urban districts, the kids are traveling as a group. They wanted to personalize it. But they wanted to go back and use assessment data for the past 3 years. And look at, they used MEP. They wanted to look at what those scores were. And then when I'm placing kids into classes, I taught math. So their math teachers had three classes, 90 minutes each. So total of 6 classes, but three lessons. And you're taking those kids and putting them into the 3 classes without a rhyme or reason. Okay? And so now what happens? You've got kids at the low end, discipline problems, right? Don't understand, they're not getting it. Kids at the high end, when I taught 7th grade math the first year I taught, the one kid I had was the brightest kid in the class. But he was a major discipline problem because he understood it. So I had to convince teachers in Detroit, you don't have to have 1 lesson plan. If you want to agree to do this, we're going to have 3 lesson plans. And this isn't tracking. This is, if the kid's high in math, could be low in English language arts. This isn't saying because years ago they used to do that. If you were a good student, you got trapped. This is not that. In math, they could be at one level and another level. So basically what we did is, I don't know if any of your schools are doing that, but I think that's the future with all the assessment going on, is how do I use assessment data? And I'll show you an example with a school I did in Chicago with algebra as an example. What level are they at? Should I have a 45-minute class with these kids? Yeah, they're good. But these kids might need 60 minutes. These kids might need 90 minutes. So why are they all being put in either a 90-minute class when all of them don't need 90 minutes? So those are some of the things. But the assessment is the thing. I'll show you one more thing from Detroit.
I first showed the design to the teachers, I think it was sometime late October, that was the point I wanted to make, that anybody could possibly schedule the school and say, okay, there's where the kids are going to be for the next year. But based upon test scores always aren't true indicators, kids may be performing and be accelerated. We wanted to build a structure that you could very easily move the kids without changing the whole schedule or having a kid have to rework their whole program. So to me, that was a critical piece.
And, you know, I do want to share, even today, now I've been out sick for a few days, and I'm greeting students at the breakfast program, and a young man comes up to me, first greets me, and then says to me, you know, I'd like to see if I could try moving into another reading group.
Really?
You know, an 8th grade student. And I was like, wow, this is so cool.
Absolutely.
Like, he understands. He could do that, you know. And I said, I told him, well, I'll meet with the teachers and discuss it. And he suggested where he thought he could go. Because he felt he was ready to go. He needed more. And I'm like, wow, that is awesome. You know?
Yeah, I wanted to make, I'm glad you brought that up, because I thought it was amazing that you even told me within the first week we implemented it, that you had a couple kids come to you.
Yeah, they actually went to the teacher saying, I think I'm in the wrong group. And so, you know, that was in the initial weeks, and the teachers have been moving students. And now today, like I said, here we are, you know, towards the end of the 3rd quarter, and the students coming to me saying, I'm ready to go.
Now, whether you're a middle school or high school, and that kid is struggling, does he stay in that class the whole year? That's the issue. Can I design a master schedule, and that's what we did for them in 7th and 8th grade, but can it be done for high schools too, where you can move that kid up or down a level? And if you can do that, then that kid, it doesn't matter whether it takes 2 years to pass algebra or 1. Does it matter? As long as the kid's got acquired those skills. So more and more assessment data as you move forward will be used by schools. But one of the things is I don't want a kid stuck in a program or a schedule for the whole year because that's what we did it. Well, because the test scores are wrong. Let's say the kid had a bad day, and you put him into a class, and now he can perform at a much better level. That gets into the common planning period. I don't have time to show you everything. I will show you more after lunch when I call. I'm going to actually call that school up on the screen and show it to you. But we put a common planning period in there every day so the 7th and 8th grade teachers could meet. And I also did that for a school in New Jersey for high school. High school had 900 students, but the new principal wanted a common planning period by department. So if she wanted to go into a meeting with the department, or the department head wanted to meet with those teachers, they had a common time. So you were able to do that as well. We'll hold off on the Mr. Fanny. So basically, just to be clear, and stop me at any time and ask questions, if you have 90 kids in that need that subject, math, what do you do with those 90 kids? Do you just put them anywhere into 3 sections? Or do you do something with that? Now keep in mind, this is Detroit, the worst school district in the country. So when I talk about scores, high level and middle, they aren't the state level scores. I'm taking these 90 kids, wherever they are, and within that level they are, group them. Am I making sense? As opposed to how many number 4s do you have? I don't have any number 4s in Detroit. All I got is 1s and 2s. Okay, so that's what we did. And we were able to group the kids into classes and then be able to come up with instruction that would be appropriate for those kids at that level. And that's where Mrs. Williams, you saw, say it made it easier for teachers to teach. And the kids actually felt better, that someone was addressing my needs, as opposed to I'm in a class and I don't know what the heck's going on. And that's what we did. Blended learning is another issue. Big pop topic today, but depending on the grade level you're at. Now, all the people in the room today are high school people, so it may not be appropriate. But then again, you say, wait a second. I just mentioned an example. We're going to put kids into algebra into different groups. Well, maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I want to have a class, and within that class, balance those kids. They had classes of 30, but 10, 10, and 10. Now, when I get into blended learning, my groups can be, I can do 2 things with the groups. I can keep the groups in the high, middle, and low, or I might say, you know what, I'm going to put some of the kids, a high-level kid in every group, because you do peer-to-peer teaching, kids can help other kids learn. So there's a lot of things you can do with the data if you got a better tool. And so all I'm doing is saying what could be done. And so when I meet with you or talk to you afterwards, one of the questions I'm going to say, what are you trying to do? Probably initially, you're probably looking at just take this whole process and simplify it for me. Take this whole process, reduce how much time it takes. But as soon as all of a sudden that doesn't take 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and it can be done in a couple weeks, then you will begin to think, what else could I do?
Get my life back?
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
So there's a lot of things we can do. This happens to be an example of that. This is a school in Philadelphia. I haven't mentioned this so far. Pictures and names have been changed. So every once in a while you see a picture of a girl and the sex is male. But I change pictures and names. But anyway, this is a real school, and this the kid over here is high in math and high in English language arts. But this girl is only high in math, but then in the middle English language arts, and high in English language arts, but low in math. And it can vary. Particularly a lot of the Hispanic kids are very good at math, but the English language arts could be weak. And so what can we do with them? And that's what we did in Philadelphia. And that's how the rotation broke out. So I'm in a class, usually by grade 6, middle schools will be departmentalized. But usually in the early grades, 3, 4, and 5, that teacher is teaching the subjects, English and math. So what can I do to create that environment so there's always groups, even groups in math, and then even groups in English language arts? You might say, well, how the heck do you do that? Well, we did it. And I explain that further. Let's talk about high school. Power school system, high school. What are the issues for kids? You got 9th grade kids. I'll use the term regular. I should be saying general kids, but you know what I'm talking about. Your typical kids are going to take algebra. You're always going to have some kids that are going to be gifted, but not in Chicago. Not in this case. That's sad to say, but it's true. And so you got general kids. You got kids in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade that failed that course. And now they'll let them repeat it either online or in school. A lot of high schools I work in New Jersey won't let them repeat it. They've got to go to summer school, take it over. But either way, in this case, this is real. So that you've got kids that got to repeat it. And then you've got kids with inclusion, special ed kids. And special ed kids is a challenge today. In many cases, that master alone can cause havoc. Because you've got kids that...
drives my whole schedule.
It's huge. It could be his biggest department. You've got inclusion kids, but they're not pure. I don't know if that's the right term, but you know what I mean. They could be inclusion and self-contained. Then you could have kids that are all self-contained. I'm going to actually show you after lunch, when I take you in to show the different filters, how we can see that and how we can lay that out. And you can't do that with the magnetic board. You can't. It just can't be done. It's just moving pieces around. And I'm going to actually show you that. But let me get back to saying, so we ended up with algebra at different levels. Power school, it's one number. So every kid that was going to take algebra, regardless of their situation, inclusion, recovery, general, all use that one number. So now when you pull the data, now so what we did is I took the data and broke the kids out into different numbers. I'll say, oh, you can't do that, you can't do that. Well, you can't have something different in the title. It can't say algebra with special. No, the numbers is different. So it all says algebra. But I look at a certain number and I know that's an inclusion kid, and this is a regular kid, just by looking at the number. And you guys that work with it all the time, you'll know right away the numbers just jump off you. After you use them, jump right out of you. And so we did that, but I want to mention, when we completed the process, went back into school, Power School, was Power School's number. So we can get it out, and that's what I'm really proposing here today. Can we take you to the cloud? There's some ways that we can work to get better results. I've had some schools take the results. Once we figured out where to put that, it'll work better. Put it right back into our system. So this in no way is replacing your system. And I have no desire to go back to do what I did for 30 years ago. I'm trying to set up a situation. I'm retired. I'll make a little extra money. It doesn't hurt to make extra money. But be able to help schools with the tools with technology we have. So anyway, with algebra, those are different things. So here's what we did. We're going to have 8 sections to cover our course load. I've got 2 sections are going to be inclusion. And even though that says 6 and 4, you might say, how come that's 6 and 4, not 5 and 5? Because this is real data. I'm going to show you after lunch this school and exactly what's real. And everything I'm going to show you is real, from a real school with real data. But we've got our 8 sections. these are the two inclusion sections, but notice what I did with the recovery. How would you like to be a 10th, and 11th, and 12th grade student in a 9th grade class, possibly with the same teacher again, right? And mixed socially. So I said, why are you doing that to these kids? Why not, if there's 20 kids, that's one section, why not put them together? Well, we can't do that. Well, yeah, maybe it could be done. I'm not saying it couldn't be done in Power School. That's also, maybe you could create multiple codes. It would affect your transcripts, that I know, etc., etc. But the point was, that's what we actually did. And then actually, I had proposed, what I'm going to show you for this particular school, I set up 3 systems in the class, not one. I said, here's one way we could do it. Then I said, if you want to get into breaking those kids into using assessments, like we did at the middle school, we could do that. And then, but the first thing I did to them is, let's take your current master schedule to the cloud, and your current course selections this year, and let's do a run. And let's see how many kids won't schedule. And over 230 kids didn't schedule. Same master as last year, same teachers, same assignments, got 230 kids unscheduled. When I was done helping them after 3 or 4 days, we had 981 kids scheduled 100% academically. 100%. And then when we add in the electives, you'll know some kids are going to kick out. And we got them to 95 plus. I'm actually going to show you that after lunch. And this is, I'm going to show you this as well. Wouldn't it be nice if you could look at, if we call them filters, show me my special ed filter. I want to see my inclusion, my self-contained classes, and I want to see, and I can actually do multiple filters, overlays, and show me that connected to math so I know where are my inclusion sections relative to math, my math department. Because you want to see your department. You want to see you have to look at your teachers and departments. And the other reason you want to do that is because when you look at your department, just as I mentioned before in the thinking process, you want to balance that department. You know, you have to look at that department. How am I utilizing my teachers? Because it isn't just the kids that are being affected, it's the teachers that are being affected. And then there's contract issues. How many periods in a row you can teach, stuff like that. But anyway, I'm going to show you this after school with the algebra that I mentioned. And basically the 3 filters, I got more than 3 filters, but I'm going to show you these 3. There's a special ed filter, which includes your inclusion and self-contained. And those kids have to schedule. And then I had a luncheon like this yesterday, about the same number of people. And then what happens when they change it? What happens when you get a late IEP? They're changing the IEP. It's true.
Well, that happens a lot.
Yeah. So what could we do with that? And I'm going to, obviously, years ago when you started building a master schedule, the first thing, if you were high school, was your AP and honors. Or in New Jersey, your IB courses. And I'll show you kids that got 5 APs or 4 IBs. And they're scheduled. They're scheduled. How did you do that? My own son in high school, bright kid, but he was being told he couldn't get those APs he wanted. No, we can't do that. And I'm in this business, and I know it can be done, but I know that you're not going to get them to change their system. And that's another point that I'd like to make. I'm not here suggesting you do anything to change your current system. And I'm not here as a threat to real-time or Genesis or anyone, because they'll probably think I'm trying to replace your system, because they'll know about Simple. That's how many years we were around. No. And that's why I merged with NewWay. So the company's new name is NewWay, but I'm using Simple's AI technology that I developed over the years. And these are some of the students I'll show you. All right, why don't we break for lunch? And then I'm going to go live, which is pretty exciting when I can actually show you. I will tell you, since this is live, and it's not a demo, I can screw up. I might hit the wrong button, but it's live. I'd rather show you live and then a demo, okay?